3. Persuade rather than coerce. With public sentiment, nothing can fail; without it, nothing can succeed. Consequently, he who molds public sentiment goes deeper than he who enacts statutes or pronounces decisions. Lincoln's remarks in the first Lincoln-Douglas debate when examining the influence Stephen A. Douglas was having on the public, August 21, 1858. Abraham Lincoln strived to work with and through people while, at the same time, always striving to achieve his own main objective, which was preservation of the Federal Union. He possessed an outgoing interest in people and had the ability to gain the confidence and respect of a wide variety of individuals. He was poised and confident under pressure, and he influenced others with his friendly manner, openness, and verbal skills. Lincoln was not the dictator the unfriendly press of his day labeled him. Though he was decisive, especially in the expansion of executive authority, he almost always rejected coercion as a means of attaining what he desired. It's worthy to note that leadership, by definition, omits the use of coercive power. When a leader begins to coerce his followers, he's essentially abandoning leadership and embracing dictatorship. Lincoln rejected the dictatorial role by becoming a persuader-delegator in substance, style, and philosophy. Looking into Lincoln's fife as a state legislator, lawyer, and congressman, we can see that it was his mastery of the art of persuasion that brought him much of his success. In 1836, at the age of 27, during his second term in the Illinois legislature, Lincoln created the plan that moved the capital of the state from Vandalia to Springfield. His clever bargaining, coupled with persistence and personal persuasiveness, allowed him to pull off what was then regarded as a political coup. Later, as a lawyer, Lincoln not only had to convince juries and judges of his position, but his clients as well. In his notes for a law lecture, written in 1850, the 41-year-old future president advised his listeners, discourage litigation. Persuade your neighbors to compromise whenever you can. His remarks to the Springfield, Washington Temperance Society in 1842 were perhaps his clearest enunciation of his philosophy regarding persuasion. When the conduct of men is designed to be influenced, persuasion, kind, unassuming persuasion, should ever be adopted. It is an old and a true maxim, that a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall. So with men. If you would win a man to your cause, convince him that you are his sincere friend. Therein is a drop of honey that catches his heart, which, say what he will, is the great high road to his reason, and which, when once gained, you will find but little trouble in convincing his judgment of the justice of your cause, if indeed that cause really be a just one. On the contrary, assume to dictate to his judgment, or to command his action, or to mark him as one to be shunned and despised, and he will retreat within himself, close all the avenues to his head and his heart, and though your cause be naked truth itself, you shall no more be able to reach him, than to penetrate the hard shell of a tortoise with a rye straw. Such is man, and so must he be understood by those who would cad him, even to his own best interest. Dictatorship, force, coercion, all were characteristics of tyrants, despots, and oppressors in Lincoln W.'s view. All violated the basic rights of the individual to which he was so committed and upon which the nation was founded. All violated a Basque sense of common decency. And here is where Lincoln tied in the golden rule and the law of the land to his personal leadership style. He treated people the way he would want to be treated, the way he knew others wanted to be treated. Lincoln learned, refined, and mastered the art of persuasion during his early career. When he entered the political arena, he used his ability to persuade as a bridge to the voting public. He struck a chord with all people when he spoke out against slavery. No one wants to be forced to do something against his will. People generally want to believe that what they're doing truly makes a difference and, more important, that it is their own idea. Lincoln realized this fact, as should all potential leaders. During his rise to power, it was a heavy theme in his speeches and writings. Somewhat camouflaged in his stance against slavery. And it was no small factor in his eventual success. No man is good enough to govern another man without that oath's consent, he remarked in 1854. Familiarize yourselves with the chains of bondage, he said in 1858, and you prepare your own limbs to wear them. And in 1859 he asserted, understanding the spirit of our institutions is to aim at the elevation of men, I am opposed to whatever tends to degrade them. Without question, dictatorship in any form degrades human beings. Furthermore, in his day-to-day activities, Lincoln did not abandon his principles once he attained the White House. As president, Lincoln attempted to gain commitment from individuals through openness, empowerment, and coaching. He provided as much support, both moral and monetary, as he possibly could. He told his cabinet members that, in questions affecting the whole country there should be full and frequent consultations and that nothing should be done particularly affecting any department without consultation with the head of that department. And he especially supported his generals, even the procrastinating George McClellan, who was constantly criticized for his deliberateness. For example, on the evening of October 26, 1861, 3 senators called at the White House and demanded that Lincoln force McClellan into action. The president, however, defended his general and sent the legislators on their way. As soon as they were gone, he visited McClellan's home and, after a lengthy conference, assured the general that, "We must not fight till you are ready." "I will hold McClellan's horse," Lincoln once said, "if he will only bring us success." Unlike McClellan, with his, "I can do it all" attitude, Lincoln was smart enough to know that he could not do it all. Each of his generals had to be his own man. If each was a leader in his own right, if each could take the responsibility, authority, and ownership of his assigned area of the war, then Lincoln would, in essence, have as many commanders-in-chief as he had generals. And then he would be able to mount a most formidable onslaught against the South, one that could not possibly be overcome. Lincoln's problem, however, was that most of his generals were not willing to assume the responsibility of command, because they lacked either the courage or the ability. Consequently he was forced to take charge himself. Through most of his administration President Lincoln ran through a gauntlet of generals who could not do the job he demanded. These professional soldiers all had opportunities to take charge and win the war. Initially, they were given the same support that was accorded McClellan. Lincoln encouraged them to take initiative, to issue orders according to their own judgment, and to act without consulting him. In short, Lincoln exercised competent leadership, he delegated responsibility and authority, and empowered his subordinates to act on their own. A few of them failed, however, causing Lincoln endless pain and anguish. Lincoln could find only one general who would do what he wanted. On March 10, 1864, he appointed Ulysses S. Grant General-in-Chief of the Army. Earlier in the war Grant had won impressive battles in Tennessee, had held tough and obtained a major victory at Vicksburg, and, as commander of the Department of the Mississippi and Department of the West, had proven his ability to fight and win. "Grant," Lincoln declared, "is the first general I have had. You know how it has been with all the rest. They wanted me to be the general. I am glad to find a man who can go ahead without me." Was it worth it for Lincoln to wait for a man like Grant to come along? What were his options in the beginning, anyway? Could he have just taken over and run the entire military operation himself? Obviously, had he done so, Lincoln would have failed because he would not have been able to handle the other responsibilities of his executive position. It actually took Lincoln 3 full years to evolve the military system and its leadership into what it eventually became under U.S. Grant. Was it worth the wait? The amazing fact that he saved the nation alone justifies his action. Yet, Lincoln's long-term commitment to making things work, without deviating from his basic philosophy regarding persuasion, support, and delegation, paid off. By continuing his relentless search for a real general, as Lincoln put it, he ended up doing the job sooner and more efficiently than he would have had he tried a more haphazard, less controlled, and desperate approach. Holding the position of President of the United States gave Lincoln not only vast power but wide-ranging influence. He realized that to get things done his way, he did not have to issue an order but could merely imply something or make a suggestion. This was his chosen way, and it proved far more effective than commanding others to obey him. Abraham Lincoln knew the value of making requests as opposed to issuing orders. The letters and telegrams that he wrote to subordinates are filled with suggestions, views, and recommendations. Rarely was there a direct order. He preferred to let his generals make their own decisions and hoped that, through his suggestions, they would do the right thing. Here are some examples. To McClellan, October 13, 63. This letter is in no sense an order. To Halleck, September 19, 63. I hope you will consider it. To Burnside, September 27, 63. It was suggested to you, not ordered. To Banks, January 13, 64. Frame orders, and fix times and places, for this and that, according to your own judgment. To Grant, April 30, 64. If there is anything wanting which is within my power to give, do not fail to let me know it. Relating a well-chosen story or anecdote was his chief form of persuasion in getting others to come around to his side. Lincoln once attempted to convince his Secretary of the Treasury, Salmon P. Chase, that it was a good idea for the government to issue interest-bearing currency as a means of raising money to support the war effort. Chase, however, objected to the proposal and argued that it was unconstitutional. Rather than simply ordering Chase to do it, which he could have as president, Lincoln chose to tell him the story of an Italian captain who ran his vessel on a rock and knocked a hole in her bottom. He set his men to pumping, and he went to pray before a figure of the Virgin in the bow of the ship. The leak gained on them. It looked at last as if the vessel would go down with all on board. The captain, at length, in a fit of rage at not having his prayers answered, seized the figure of the Virgin and threw it overboard. Suddenly the leak stopped, the water was pumped out, and the vessel got safely to port. When docked for repairs, the statue of the Virgin Mary was found stuck, head foremost, in the hole. Chase at first didn't see the precise application of the story. "Why, Chase," responded Lincoln, "I don't intend precisely to throw the Virgin Mary overboard, and by that I mean the Constitution, but I will stick it in the hole if I can. These rebels are violating the Constitution in order to destroy the Union. I will violate the Constitution, if necessary, to save the Union, and I suspect, Chase, that our Constitution is going to have a rough time of it before we get done with this row." Another method of persuasion Lincoln often used was to write long, detailed letters to his subordinates. Perhaps the best single source illustrating Lincoln's attitude and philosophy regarding persuasion, support, and delegation is in his remarkable letter to General Joseph Hooker, written on the occasion of the general's appointment to command the Army of the Potomac. The President had dismissed General Ambrose Burnside, after Burnside demanded the removal of Hooker as a corps commander, and then named Hooker in his place. Lincoln had been frustrated with Burnside's inaction and was looking for someone to lead the army into battle. Hooker was widely known by his nickname, Fighting Joe, and that seemed good enough for the President. The appointment was also consistent with Lincoln's tendency to select men whom he felt would be action-oriented. However, there were also some problems regarding the general's conduct that Lincoln felt he had to address. Hooker constantly criticized and argued with his superiors. In addition, after the Battle of Fredericksburg, he had suggested that what the country needed was a dictator. Now here is where Lincoln was confronted with a unique problem. What were his options? He could simply have ignored Hooker and not appointed him at all. In fact, Lincoln had every reason not to appoint this arrogant general. But he was desperate to find a general who would take the initiative, and he believed, at the time, that Fighting Joe would do just that. So Lincoln decided to take a chance on Hooker, but he used the same style of persuasion, support, and encouragement that he had used with all the previous generals. On January 26, 1863, Lincoln summoned his new commander to Washington, where the two discussed Hooker's attitudes along with sweeping strategies for pursuing the war effort. Through the course of their conversation, Lincoln told Hooker what he expected and, at the end of the meeting, so that the general could ponder the issues more thoroughly, Lincoln handed him this now famous letter. Executive Mansion, Washington, January 26, 1863. Major General Hooker. General, I have placed you at the head of the Army of the Potomac. Of course, I have done this upon what appears to me to be sufficient reasons. And yet I think it best for you to know that there are some things in regard to which I am not quite satisfied with you. I believe you to be a brave and skillful soldier, which, of course, I like. I also believe you do not mix politics with your profession, in which you are right. You have confidence in yourself, which is a valuable, if not an indispensable quality. You are ambitious, which, within reasonable bounds, does good rather than harm. But I think that during General Burnside's command of the army, you have taken counsel of your ambition, and thwarted him as much as you could, in which you did a great wrong to the country, and to a most meritorious and honorable brother officer. I have heard, in such a way as to believe it, of your recently saying that both the army and the government needed a dictator. Of course it was not for this, but in spite of it, that I have given you the command. Only those generals who gain successes, can set up dictators. What I now ask of you is military success, and I will risk the dictatorship. The government will support you to the utmost of its ability, which is neither more nor less than it has done and will do for all commanders. I much fear that the spirit which you have aided to infuse into the army, of criticizing their commander, and withholding confidence from him, will now turn upon you. I shall assist you as far as I can, to put it down. Neither you, nor Napoleon, if he were alive again, could get any good out of an army, while such a spirit prevails in it. And now, beware of rashness. Beware of rashness, but with energy, and sleepless vigilance, go forward, and give us victories. Yours very truly. A. Lincoln. Contemporary leaders can learn an important lesson from this letter. For here, in one bold stroke, Lincoln told Hooker exactly what he thought of him, both good and bad, and precisely what he expected. He offered support and assistance, and he encouraged his general to take the initiative and do the right thing. Then Lincoln handed Hooker the letter so that he could take it with him and ponder their conversation more thoroughly. Here was Lincoln the leader at his best. And General Hooker was deeply impressed. Several months later, he remarked to a newspaperman that this communiqué was just such a letter as a father might write to his son. Leadership often involves parenting, and Lincoln's fatherly tendencies aided him in his position as president. The organization is the family, the leader is the head of the family. Consequently, leaders often nurture and guide subordinates much as parents do children. It's not called the art of persuasion for nothing. This intangible, often elusive, skill was a mainstay in Lincoln's interaction arsenal. He was adept at stepping in when subordinates had just missed gaining victory. He constantly modeled the tenets that he preached. He rendered discipline in a fatherly way. All of this formed the basis for a consistent, reliable method to persuade and produce. With today's employees wanting more than monetary and tangible rewards, leaders need to use different persuasive tactics than the traditional stick and carrot approach. Understanding the nuances of various positions and building rapport with a variety of workers allows you to take the most effective path to success without damaging relationships. Discourage formal grievances. Persuade your subordinates to compromise whenever you can. Use force only as a last resort. Remember that your followers generally want to believe that what they do is their own idea and, more importantly, that it genuinely makes a difference. If you would win a subordinate to your cause, first convince him that you are his sincere friend. Seek the consent of your followers for you to lead them. If you practice dictatorial leadership, you prepare yourself to be dictated to. Delegate responsibility and authority by empowering people to act on their own. On issues that affect your entire organization, conduct full and frequent consultations with the heads of your various departments. A good leader avoids issuing orders, preferring to request, imply, or make suggestions.